my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious It has begun!
The Enrichment Center is required to remind you that you will be baked, and then there will be cake.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
It's time for the week's latest news in tech, gaming, movies, TV, and all things geeky. Welcome to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions.
Welcome, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. I know you guys were expecting a little bit of an intro, but it's summertime, and so, unfortunately, you'll need to pardon our dust. We're trying to get some computer problems fixed, and, well, it keeps breaking. So, that's unfortunate, but we are here, we are live, we're doing it live.
Yep.
So to speak, and we are here with Stephen Romney. Romney, welcome, first of all, to the Tech Hour. For crying out loud, we tried for so many months to get you here.
Yeah, well, I guess now that I've graduated, I don't have to worry about dealing with classes, and so that's why I'm here.
And first of all, congratulations on that. So I was actually really cool to see the update that you gave to Romney's reviews and said, you know, this is how things are going to go. Totally understand, and I know a lot of people were rooting for you, including me. Now, I am going to point out really quick for people, Aldo is actually going to be absent tonight. He actually got a new 9-to-5 job, and so we're excited for him, but this is, I guess, the transition period where he doesn't really get a whole lot of say in the matter, and he's got a pretty big company. I'm 50-50 on spoiling it, but maybe we'll go ahead and say it. For people who know the work over at Avalanche Studios, they're mainly responsible for, like, the Just Cause games. Mm-hmm. He is now part of that team. I don't know specifically the position. We were hoping to ask him when he got here, but unfortunately he isn't here. So we have to just go, well, poo-poo to you, Aldo, and we'll talk to you next time, and we get all the raccoon references.
Yeah.
Romney gets to invent a bunch of new effects, because, you know, Aldo had the Molyneux effect and the Microsoft effect and everything like that, so you get to invent them now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I've already come up with a few effects on my review channel, like the Stephen King effect.
Yes.
That's so far the only major one. Like, I think that's the only one I've really used in a lot of my reviews. I kind of wish I used it in my Godzilla review, because that summarizes the film perfectly.
Oh, that's not a good thing. That's not. See, I've actually held off, guys, from watching his Godzilla review because I am excited for this movie, and I want it to be. I don't need it to be huge, okay? If it's Pacific Rim quality, I have no problem. But if it's Roland Emmerich 1998 Godzilla, I may leave the theater like quarter in. I may just be like, nope, screw it, I'm not doing it. All right, but we've actually got a lot to talk about today with the Tech Hour. We've actually got one story from each of the big three in the last couple of weeks because we missed last week, too. First of all, we're going to be talking about Philips and how they are suing Nintendo over patents. So we'll get into the details there, but yes, Philips.
Interesting.
We're going back in time, Romney, to the CDI.
Wow.
Because everybody loved the CDI, right? Right? Oh. The unholy Triforce gets unearthed again. And then
the unholy Triforce and the hotel that you can never seem to escape, no matter how many doors you close.
It's like the Hotel California. You can enter, but you can never leave.
Nope.
And then we're also going to be talking about Sony, because Sony's taking a measure from Nintendo because of their lackluster sales with the PS4, and all their major execs are taking a 50% pay cut. And I don't know if it's internationally, because Nintendo was restricted to just Japan. I do know that Reggie, like, I've seen articles where Reggie did volunteer to take a pay cut. I don't know if he ever did, though. But Sony's now doing that in order to satisfy their shareholders, as well as kind of fend off the fact that the PS4 has not been doing so well.
Yeah.
The other story that we're going to be talking about is Microsoft, because they're not doing so well either, strangely enough. So we're going to be talking about the possible Xbox One price cut.
Wow.
Because they're taking Kinect out of the bundle. You can now get a Kinectless Xbox One. And the part that confuses me is I thought it was necessary. Now Microsoft is saying not so much.
Yeah, I guess it literally is just a case of, please buy a Kinect.
Oh, and it will take off $100. So at that point, they will be contending with the PS4.
Well, yeah, and that's definitely a page they're taking from Nintendo, because Nintendo did the same thing with the 2DS, taking the 3D out and releasing a cheaper version.
You know what? I actually need to eat some crow, guys. I ragged on that, and I actually like the idea.
Yeah,
because I never use the 3D.
Well, and especially it's good for kids too, because because they notice how they had that come out around the time of the Pokemon games, and given that the 3D can't be used for kids under 6 years old, it's definitely a good idea. Especially that's why they have it as like the solid design instead of the clamshell design. I'll even pull mine out to demonstrate for the camera we've got rolling.
Oh yes, this is another big thing. We are doing it live. For people who have noticed, we have actually launched on YouTube, and so now we're going to be launching a video feed, so that's going to be exciting.
But yeah, notice how the 3DS has its clamshell design, and the camera cut.
Well, we also have our own little errors. But in the meantime, we also do have one last story to talk about, and this is something that me and Aldo have gotten into, so we may bring it back next week. But I also know that Romney is a bit of a Square Enix fan. And so you'll be happy to hear they're doing well. Their financials just barely came back, and a lot of their major sales, such as Tomb Raider and Final Fantasy XIV, this was the one that blew my mind.
At least the revamped one, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the Realm Reborn. They've all been doing well, and it's looking like Square Enix is going to be able to make a turnaround. The other added benefit is I'll bet with the new Thief that came out, the fact that Tomb Raider is going to the next-gen consoles in a definitive edition. You're also going to have Bravely Default, which a lot of Final Fantasy fans have criticized the current pace of the series, and now Bravely Default seems a little bit like a step back to those retro days. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are liking that. So these are the stories that we're going to be talking about. But in the meantime, we do need to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll start up with Nintendo being sued by Philips. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions continues. Welcome back, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the first story here, Romney, because I'm kind of surprised just at the person who's making the allegations against Nintendo, and I'm going to kind of open this up for Romney to be able to see. But it looks like Philips is now crying foul on a couple of their patents. To my knowledge, when I did the homework for it, it looks like that they're going after at least one patent on the Wii Remote that was done by Philips. And then the other one, it's at least one. I've seen up to 2 patent claims on the Wii Remote. And then I've also heard of another patent claim regarding the Wii U gamepad and being able to stream your gameplay from the console but onto the Wii U gamepad screen. I have not been able to confirm if that's part of the whole suit right off the bat, but I found it interesting that this came out right as Nintendo was basically being asked about what their future is, where things are standing with the company. Mm-hmm. They have actually said that there is a successor to the Wii U, and they are working on it.
Yeah.
And they're also looking to just fix all the errors that they made with the Wii U. But in a lot of cases, I also agree with Iwata-san. It really would have helped this console if one game came out with it that just blew everybody's mind. And unfortunately, what came out with the Wii U was stuff we'd already seen numerous times.
Yeah, especially, it didn't help that a lot of the launch titles were just ports.
Pretty much. I mean, it was, like, the biggest title that I'm thinking of that launched with the Wii U was Super Mario Bros. U. And while it did have some unique features, it was the new Super Mario Bros. Engine, but cool in HD.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the downside of it. And Nintendo Land, holy crap, guys, this was their Wii Sports for this generation. That kind of failed. I mean, a lot of people have asked for a Nintendo-based theme park at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't think they gave a whole lot of thought to how that would work in a digital format.
No, MatPat pretty much has broken down kind of the reasons of how the Wii U could be technically argued as the next Virtual Boy. It's just there are some factors that I think a lot of people don't consider as to why the Wii U's also failed. It's just one of the major things that's changed between the 90s and now is that consumers are just a lot smarter nowadays. They know that it's not a good idea to buy a console at launch because of all the problems they would have and the fact that all the good titles take about 3 years to start appearing.
Well, and the other thing also to consider is the demographic that they keep aiming for is getting older and older and older, where some of them were early adopters as kids. Mm-hmm. They now have families, and now they have to consider whether or not it's worth it to go out and get this game console if there's nothing on it. Yeah. This is my biggest complaint with the other two. The PS4, I have no problems with how it looks and how it operates, My problem is the game library wasn't there.
Especially given that they took out the backwards compatibility, which a lot of people were
Yeah,
taking issue with.
that was something that made me have some issues. But Nintendo's no different, because as far as I'm concerned, you could easily make it backwards compatible with GameCube and Wii games, and they decided against it.
Well, I know it's at least backwards compatible with Wii games.
It's with the Wii, but not GameCube. The Wii U only goes back one generation, and really what they're trying to do is adopt the Sony model, where instead of having you put the disc in, you download or digitally download the game, but that means you purchase it again. So that's kind of the problem with it. But overall, so actually let's get into it really quick. Since this is the first time you've been on the Tech Hour here, Romney, what do you own? What do you primarily play? Things like that. Let's get people to know. Let's get people to know you, Romney.
Well, as for the consoles that I own, like the ones that are at my house, we've got like newest ones we've got is an Xbox 360 and a Wii, and the 3DS is the main thing I primarily play because my older and younger brother tend to hog the Xbox 360 for most of the time. And those are pretty much the newest systems we have. Like the older ones we've got Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. We had a PS2, but then it crapped out, leaving us with a bunch of games we can't play. And so, really, the 360 and the 3DS are kind of the latest consoles I've been really able to play. And so, options have been kind of limited in what I actually have access to.
Yeah, and I just barely got my hands on a PS4, to try out some of the games. Like, for example, Resogun, for one of the indie titles that came out for it, which was really good. But again, it's in a Best Buy. You can't really test too much on it.
Yeah, I think like the newest game that I've actually played would have to be Ground Zeroes, which I rented from Redbox, and pretty fun as a rental title. Yeah,
I think you and I even talked about it. It really is just kind of the tanker section of Metal Gear Solid 2 under this new banner. And I'll admit now, it's really jarring to have Kiefer Sutherland as Big Boss and then have 24 return. So it's like, I get Jack Bauer, and in the video games, I get Jack Bauer. Jack Bauer with a beard and eye patch. So in the meantime, let's get back to this story. So do we really think that Philips has got a claim here? Do we think that they're going? It just sounds to me like they're looking for money because
it definitely sounds.
Nintendo and Philips have had a bad history.
Yeah,
overall.
It definitely sounds similar to a lot of the patent troll cases that have come about over the past decade. Because I know there was a past where a judge ruled, and it was a very dumb ruling that got overturned very quickly. About how they'll no longer be allowed to sell Microsoft products in the state of Texas, and everybody just went, what?
Oh no! I remember the gaming community going nuts on that one. What was it? And somebody actually did the analysis on like how many accounts actually were from Texas for COD, and it was like, and 255,000 COD accounts went silent.
Yeah, I think it was specifically limited though to Microsoft Office, but even then it was still a stupid thing because it's just a classic case of patent trolling. Except this time it's a larger company doing it. I'm guessing, given that Philips, especially now that CDs are no longer the major medium to get entertainment on, they're probably trying to get what money they can. And Nintendo just doesn't seem to do a good job of playing well with other companies, because, I mean, Philips, they had the bad experience with it, but at least they actually made it to the stage where they got a console. The whole reason the PlayStation exists was because Sony was so mad that Nintendo decided to break the deal they had with Sony to go over to Philips.
Well, I'm glad you brought up kind of the Japanese business politics here, because that's also a problem between Philips and Nintendo, is that Philips did get a lot of properties and things like that, but when they did horribly with them, like, for example, we brought up the Unholy Triforce, that got yanked, and Nintendo didn't really want to work with them anymore. And when you do that in Japanese business politics, you are going to regret that later if your business is tanking. So at that point, the other question is this just Philips going for the throat because they see Nintendo bleeding?
That may be it as well, given the poor sales of the Wii U, although the sales of the 3DS and the 3DS library have been what's been keeping Nintendo afloat during these rocky times, but it's still just a case of, I think it's just more a case, Philips smells blood in the water, they're trying to go for it, and the getting's good. Pretty
much. I mean, at that point, that was the first thing that came to my mind, because if Sony could do it, they'd do it. I mean, Sony's already said, if somebody actually brought up the idea of Nintendo going third party, like Sega did, and Sony's already said, we wouldn't do them, we wouldn't sponsor their games, even though we know it would bring us in a ton of money. They burned us in the past, we're not dealing with them. Microsoft really has no reason to bring them in either, because Nintendo's burned them too.
Well, like, they kind of both burned each other on occasion. I mean, Nintendo's turned down ideas Microsoft had, but Microsoft also acquisition properties from Nintendo, like the buyout of Rareware.
Yeah, and
so Microsoft would probably be likely to just I know it probably would be worst case scenario if Nintendo did go third party. Microsoft would probably just buy them out like they bought out Rareware.
Probably, and at that point, I would be very sad because you'd lose some quality there.
Mm-hmm.
You can guarantee that some of the bigger developers would leave at that point because they know exactly what they're walking into. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the next story. Now we're talking about, since we already brought up Sony here and there, I actually found it funny because earlier this year I brought up the whole concept of Nintendo executives taking a huge price cut or salary cut in order to satisfy shareholders. They even Satoru Iwata actually even worked things out with the original order, Yamauchi-san, and got some of his money or some of his stocks sold and brought back into Nintendo's revenue. So at that point, I find it interesting that after their lackluster appeal to the new consoles, Sony is now starting to do that as well. They don't list exactly who this is limited to, but since Sony is an international company, it makes you wonder if it's just Japan that's doing this or if it's going to be all of the execs. But they're all going to be taking a 50% price cut to their salaries. This is the gaming division. This isn't hurting the movies or anything like that. But I found it interesting that they're doing this almost as if they're kind of worried that the PS4 has not sold very well at all.
Yeah, and it's got the same problem that a lot of the consoles that have just launched have. A lot of people are just holding off until the really good games, the highly anticipated titles, are actually out for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually one of my problems with it right now is because it's very, why did you launch this and you didn't have a library kind of thing. I mean, they had some good indie titles, don't get me wrong, but when your biggest title that came out, I'm trying to think, what was it? Because Knack wasn't it. I think the biggest title that was on the PS4 launching was the Call of Duty title. And it didn't do that well. Well,
yeah, and it was multi-platform, too.
It was multi-platform, and maybe the one I'm thinking might have been Killzone when that came out. But a lot of people had a problem with that game because, you know, it's supposed to be this next-gen shooter, and there was just nothing new to it. Nothing new to the equation. So at that point, do we think it's a good idea for execs to be taking a 50% pay cut? I actually think it shows dedication.
Yeah. I mean, at least it shows that they're not just trying to just... Because let's just say the game companies, Microsoft and Sony, definitely are having a bit of a PR problem because of a lot of the things that the PS4 and Xbox One do, and a lot of the anti-consumer policies that have been going on. And so the pay cut may not be so much, oh, we're losing money and we need to tighten our belts, but also just maybe also part of a PR stunt so that they try to win favor of the consumers a little bit, because a lot of people are hung up about the backwards compatibility thing, as well as the various having.
Well, their answer for it too. I mean, a lot of people don't want to rebuy their PS1 games in digital format. They just want to be able to put that in the disc. I understand why that can't work, but a lot of people are like, okay, well, maybe if you could show some kind of way that you've purchased it. Unfortunately, the tech does not build up to that. Unfortunately, I think actually in a lot of cases, being a person who's done it myself, Sony has been very generous in that regard. And I know people are going to scream out, Sony fanboy! But I think they've been fairly generous because I've been buying back a lot of PS1 titles that I can't play on my PS3, and they've been fairly cheap, okay?
Yeah.
I could have easily paid the $40 all over again, and instead I'm paying $5, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, and with the PS3 games, I have a feeling they may end up doing kind of what they've been, from what I've heard they've done with the PS Vita, where if you have titles that you bought for the PSP, you can get them at a discounted price for buying digital versions to play on your Vita. I remember because that was one console I was considering buying, mostly because I've been wanting to play Birth by Sleep, so...
Well, you're talking to the right person, because I just barely purchased a Vita, and I love it. So that's actually one of the things that I do love about it, is that if I have a purchased PSP console, or PSP game, that I purchased digitally, which in a lot of cases with the Vita, that's the best way to do it, because you want to get the digital bundle. You get it for free. I've had to pay for none of the ones that I've paid digitally. And that's a lot of ones. Like, for example, the Dissidia games, I purchased digitally. The Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, I purchased digitally. I've been able to just download them. They don't take forever. And
Nintendo's kind of been doing the same thing with their Nintendo Network thing and kind of hybridizing what they had for the Wii U now with across all consoles. So any digital title you purchased, you get to re-download.
Well, and one of the things I'll actually point out that's very pro-Sony, and again, Sony fanboy! I'm a PlayStation Plus user because I do lots of Let's Plays and things like that. I don't want to lose data. I actually had the scare of that last December when my PS3 died after many years of service. And I'm like, and I'm like, all three of the games that we were doing on Draken Shadow at that point, I want to say Aldo, Romney, they were all on the PS3. And I'm like, oh, crap. So at that point, yes, I adopted into PlayStation Plus. But I've also found it interesting now as a Vita owner, because all the games that I want to own, free. PlayStation Plus, free. I can just download them. And I've literally, Romney, I've had to pay for no games on the Vita. That's been wonderful for me. And that's including indie games, too. Mm-hmm. So, bottom line, back to this, I actually think it's a great idea because it shows that the company has faith. You know, I'll bring this back up again. I loved the concept when I read an article where Reggie was even offering to take a pay cut. Mm-hmm. And that's a great thing to me because that shows Reggie has faith in the company. He loves the brand. He loves what they're doing. In fact, he has no more in the know than we do. If there's a Zelda game being made, Reggie's going to know about it because he's got to advertise it.
Especially since they recently announced that they are going to be appearing at E3 this year.
Yes, I did hear that. They're going to be doing the Treehouse, plus they're going to have an appearance. And I think it's a very limited appearance, I know that much. I think they're only playing for Iwata-san and for Reggie. And that already tells me something. They have a big announcement there if they're only going for those two. Because you could easily bring Miyamoto, and then at that point you go, it's a new Zelda announcement or something.
Either a new Zelda, a new Mario, and they've been trying to build up hype for the new Smash Brothers as of late. So. Yes.
So I think this is actually a really good measure for Sony to take. It shows that they've got confidence in their product. And truth be told, I think that their game lineup is going to show really good promise. It's just the fact they should have waited a year and let this stuff come out with the console. And then they wouldn't have this problem. Because games like The Order that's coming out looks really, really good. It's just it didn't come out at launch, and that's the problem that people had.
Yeah.
So, but in the meantime, we are going to take another quick break. When we get back, we're going to be talking about the Connectless Xbox One. Wait, I thought that was supposed to be part of the console. I thought I was supposed to be watching you all the time, and watching and waiting and being Skynet! But in the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy as Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions continues. Welcome back, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. So let's go ahead and get into this. We remember when the Xbox One was announced, and all of the controversial announcements that came with it. In fact, I hammered on it pretty freaking hard last summer. So much so that I actually got complaints. So at this point, I find it interesting that last year, they were saying the Kinect that came with it was essential. And it needed to be there. And now we're getting talks about a possible price cut, and the way they're going to cut it is by taking out the Kinect. So it wasn't as essential as Microsoft made it out to be, Romney.
No, it's pretty much kind of like what Google's been doing with YouTube, saying Google Plus didn't fail, the Kinect didn't fail.
Exactly.
Okay, it did.
It totally did. But we're not willing to admit it. It didn't fail. Yes, it did. No, it didn't. And so I find it a little funny, and it actually is going to take off $100 to that price tag.
Definitely a huge cut.
And here's the thing. I don't mind it, personally.
I don't think a lot of people do.
That was one of my biggest beefs, and why I was probably going to wait till that being my last update. Because I didn't know if I wanted the Kinect. I've messed around with the original Kinect, the 1.0, and I didn't hate it, but it wasn't the greatest thing ever, like a lot of people I was talking to were saying it was. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's kind of my overall viewpoint of motion gaming, is that it still needs a lot of work, and I have no problem if they want to keep working on it, but make motion gaming its own separate thing, and then bring back some of the retro stuff so that you aren't losing people by bringing franchises like, say, Metroid into just motion gaming.
Or, yeah, because I've tried the Kinect at the Microsoft Store. The game I tried out was Dragon's Lair for the Kinect. That is probably... I literally didn't have to do with the motion in the direction they needed it. I literally just, flapped around in any which way, and it inputted the commands.
Oh, I can one up you. I actually played Kinect Star Wars.
Wow.
That was horrible. And the only and here's the thing, the way I tried the Kinect out was my brother was an early adopter because he loved it. Because it wasn't that it was a great thing for the Xbox, it was a great thing for PCs overall. He's a programmer, so he looked at this and went, this is so cool. Just think of keyboards being done this way. And so he got Kinect Star Wars, and the only thing that his 3 little girls wanted to do was the dancing. Yeah. And so I couldn't walk away from the dancing segments, and I actually got them away long enough to mess around with the Jedi simulator. And even then, that just wasn't that great.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the thing: I don't have a problem with motion gaming. I just want to be able to say, okay, I can either try it in the motion format or I can try it with a controller. And in some cases like Mass Effect, where I can do that, that's a great thing. But I'll admit, that was one of the things I was not happy about with getting a $500 Xbox One with a Kinect that constantly is on and forever watching you. Until you are John Connor, and then you have to go back to the past and invent yet another reason to go back into the past.
Yeah. Either that or it's just monitoring, like, the whatever spank material you use, or if you accidentally say nuke.
I thought that was the PS4.
No.
Because we both saw the Playroom controversies that came out of that one.
Yeah, or it could just be a case of, I hope Xbox doesn't nuke the Chinese.
Yeah, pretty much something like that. It's just one of those things where I waited for Giles Barker to come out. I don't know about this Xbox One is going to get Kim Jong-il's head going, and then we're going to blow up the world, and that's all that's going to happen about it. This is a terrible, terrible thing, and this is a terrible accent for Charles Barker. He's a knucklehead. He's crazy. So at that point, yes, at this point, it's not a bad idea to have a $100 price cut. But we've been saying this a lot in this hour, Romney. Shall we repeat it? If you don't have the games, it doesn't really matter now, does it?
No, it does not.
And
I mean, Brent DeVos even wrote a song about why you shouldn't buy a console at launch.
Oh, I didn't even know he did that.
Yeah,
I gotta go find it.
It came out around the same time that the PS4 and Xbox One launched, and it was just a case of you never buy a console at launch, and it was done.
Yes.
It was done in the whole Schoolhouse Rock style.
Oh man, I gotta go find this now. But yeah, I mean the bottom line is that I hammered on Microsoft at E3 because at least Sony had something to look forward to in this year and in the next year. All Microsoft had going for it, I'll admit, Microsoft had me for 5 seconds. Killer Instinct announcement. Holy crap, the Rare property's coming back. Oh, wait, but there's all these free-to-play stuff, and I can only play as one character if I don't want to pay $80 for the whole thing. Yeah, I'm gone.
Yeah, that, and they're also trying way too hard with the whole Xbox TV thing with the Halo series,
yes.
The documentary that financed the Atari landfill discovery.
You mean the documentary that I talked about last week on or 2 weeks ago on the Tech Hour? It was awesome. Yeah, it's not enough for me to want to purchase one. Or the wonderful, great alliance with the NFL that turned out to be with every other console.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be like the NFL. It was basically DirecTV's NFL Sunday Ticket. That's what it was.
Yeah.
For Xbox One. And then everybody else got it. Doesn't really work now, does it?
Nope.
I mean, really, the only things they had me excited for was Killer Instinct and Titanfall. Now, Titanfall has not been what I thought it was going to be, especially when I found out that there really just isn't a single-player campaign for it. That sucks for me as a mecha fan, because that's wasted potential right there. You could have easily had a really great robot game with multiplayer, and you did nothing with it.
Yeah, well, that's another issue with launch titles. They basically try to pile on the gimmicks, try to make the most use of the console, without actually figuring out how to properly implement stuff like that in the gameplay.
And especially when a lot of people were saying, like, this is the next generation Halo. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's COD or Halo, fine, but it's not like this revolutionary concept. Halo, for as much crap as I've given it in the past, and here's the thing, I don't hate it. It was revolutionary when it came out, especially in its storyline, but this isn't. This doesn't really have a storyline. It's just multiplayer. Okay, that's fine, but you're not going to get my money.
Yeah, the storyline was pretty much an afterthought.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's frustrating to me. But here's the question that does come up. Is this enough, and I will ask this to Aldo next week, is this enough to justify an Xbox One for you, Romney?
Personally, not so much, mainly because there's just not really any titles that are available for the Xbox One that I really am interested in purchasing, especially ones that aren't already going multi-platform. Yeah,
funniest thing about that. Yeah, for me it's not. Mainly because my main complaint last year was not towards the hardware. both of them had really great hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And they were advertised as media machines. And guess what, boys and girls? Your current consoles are media machines!
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, that's not what I'm caring about. As a gamer, I care about the games. What are you going to have come out? And at least Sony and Nintendo gave me a library. Xbox sat there and went, well, we have this great alliance with the NFL, and we've got Titanfall, and we've got Rise, Son of Rome, and all these games that potentially flop. The only one that nobody complains about is Killer Instinct, except now people are complaining about it because of the new developer that's in charge of it.
Yeah, well, especially since most of the original people that founded Rareware have since jumped ship.
Pretty much. And at that point, this was more along the lines of, wow, you finally decided to dig out of the Rare boat and get some good properties. Oh, wait. But you're not having Rare do it because they're in charge of your Kinect team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is just the case. A lot of companies are still coming out with games for the PS3 and Xbox 360, and so...
That's the other problem, too, is that they still have lineups set up for these consoles for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that basically tells a gamer, wait 2 years. Wait until there's nothing coming out for this console, and then at that point, the PS4 and the Xbox One will have libraries.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of those things where I don't think Sony or Microsoft thought that one out.
No, they didn't.
Nintendo did, because they needed to upgrade to an HD console.
Mm-hmm.
But not Sony and not Microsoft. It makes me sad.
Yeah, it's pretty much just it's pretty much all it is. It's basically like Coke and Pepsi trying to outdo each other over and over again.
Pretty much.
Just watch when we get something called a new Xbox or a new PlayStation that... I don't even know how that would work, but they'd probably find a way.
That just makes me think of like the new Coca-Cola campaign or Crystal Pepsi.
Yeah.
Oh, this just in. Sony will be sponsored by Coca-Cola.
Or
and
just
Xbox will be sponsored by Pepsi.
Yeah, introducing the PlayStation Crystal.
Oh, man. See, I was actually going to go the other end, but that's me. But you know what? Actually, that should go Xbox, because that'd be Mountain Dew, and then you could do like the Mountain Dew Cheetos or whatever. Have you heard of that from Japan? There are Pepsi and Mountain Dew flavored Cheetos.
Can't say I'm surprised. I mean...
Dude, they're, I haven't tried them, but I've seen people try them, like, on YouTube, and they're sickly sweet. So...
Yeah, given that they pretty much have, like, more than 50 varieties of Kit Kat, and they actually pretty much apply the Pokemon logic to the Kit Kat of the whole gotta collect all the flavors thing.
I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't gone down the Twix logic in advertising with Kit Kat, where it's like the left and the right are different things.
Well, I guess it's because with Kit Kat, they usually come with the 4 bars as opposed to just 2, so...
That would have been fun, though. You know, like, we're bar 1, we're bar 2, we're bar 3. Nah,
yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if they've come up with some sort of piano variant. I would be surprised if they haven't yet, because I'd pretty much like have.
Oh, you mean like black and white keys?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fun. I'd do. I'd totally do a YouTube video on that. But yeah, there's been so many variations on the Kit Kats. But this again just brings me down to a low point. So let's talk about a high point with Square Enix, who a lot of people have claimed I am a Square Enix fanboy. And you're probably right, because I've played a lot of Final Fantasy, and I've played a lot of Square Enix properties.
Yeah.
But I was happy to hear that they've been able to make a turnaround. They've been doing bad since Final Fantasy XIII's release, and I'll say this right now for the record. I don't think that's a bad game, story-wise. Gameplay, there were problems. But, you know, because like, I'm right now playing through 13.2, because I'm an old fart and I haven't gotten through all my stack of games. And so I'm just barely getting through 13.2, and I will admit the gameplay is an improvement, but I still have some questions, kind of thing. It's one of those things where I'm very happy that 15 is going to be adopting the Kingdom Hearts engine, which is more for this kind of combat that they want to do.
Yeah.
The old engine is just not going to work for it. So I was very happy to hear Square Enix is making a turnaround. It was just surprising to me the titles that did it for it. Tomb Raider makes absolute perfect sense. I played that game. It makes sense that that's one of the turnaround titles, especially when it came back for a definitive edition on the next-gen consoles. Thief, the new Thief. Aldo will be very happy to hear this. Thief was a turnaround title, even though for some reason they fired off a bunch of people because they thought it was doing horribly.
Yeah.
The Final Fantasy X 10.2 HD remake did really well for them.
Makes sense. The nostalgia dollar is always a bit of a...
Yeah, well, and I think the other part that did that well for them, Romney, was the fact that it came out for PS3, for PS4, and for Vita. So in a lot of cases, like with me, where I have my nostalgia on the go, it makes more sense to purchase that on Vita.
Well, yeah, especially given that the 10.2 one came with Last Mission and everything, so it was the updated version as well.
Yeah, I never got the whole concept of the Last Mission. Is that where they try to take the features of you didn't have to do like 100% to get a perfect ending out, or
I'm not sure. I just know that there was like some extra content that was put into it.
Yeah, like an extra
dress spheres and I think some extra mission stuff as well.
Congratulations, you're getting the Charlie's Angels of Final Fantasy into more scantily clad gear. Yeah, that works out perfectly. The part that threw me off, though, was Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn was part of that. I'd heard that had done well, considering compared to its predecessor.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it did that well. And I actually was a little bit surprised, too, because I saw other news saying 11's getting a huge update in light of all this stuff. I thought they actually had to get rid of 11 in order to do 14, and they used their servers.
Well, I've heard a lot of mixed things. I think they still had 11 going during the early stages of 14, and I think that was probably a good thing that they kept it going because of the massive apologies they had to send out to all the people because of how badly 14 was going, which is...
Yeah.
I even looked into some of the backstory of it, and literally one of the things that made 14 fail so badly is that they were putting so much attention to the graphics that even a potted plant would be rendered to the same degree of quality as the player characters. And that was one of the major problems, is that it was literally all graphics but not enough gameplay, and so they pretty much brought in a completely new team to go in and fix it, and that's pretty much what happens, that the new team went in and fixed all the problems.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the best comparison that I had was... I'm not usually an early adopter of MMOs, because MMOs take a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
I've done 2 MMOs kind of hardcore in my life. I've done World of Warcraft, and I've done Old Republic. And I was, I'm a Final Fantasy fan, but even I heard how bad 14 did. And here's my reaction to A Realm Reborn. My brother was an early adopter. He played it. And then, for some weird reason, on the day of its launch, he'd been through the beta, and on the day of its launch, he logged into WoW. And just went, I'll play it later. And then never went really back to it. So that's been kind of the reaction I've been seeing a lot with 14. I'm surprised it did so well that it's one of the comeback titles. The other one that isn't listed here, though, and I wonder if it needs to be credited, and that is Bravely Default. Bravely Default, I have not heard one bad thing from a retro RPG player on it.
Yeah, so far the only bad thing I've heard about it is in regards to the sleep points and how that was kind of a microtransaction, but that was the only bad thing I've heard about it.
The only beef I ever heard was I don't know if you heard the controversy around I think it's called the Bravo bikini. They actually do take some of the female characters in that game and put them in bikinis, but here's why it wasn't a big deal to me. They are so misshapen that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not happy that they took a female character who's supposedly like 14 years old and put them in a bikini for, well, sex appeal. That's my problem. But you couldn't tell. You really couldn't.
Yeah, that is it's Japan. I mean, they've already made
Japan.
They've made some changes to the outfits. They've changed the characters' ages for the U.S. release. So
yes. So that's a little bit more acceptable. What's acceptable in Japan isn't necessarily acceptable here. So they've actually been able to turn things around financially, and this is good considering their new lineup. I actually didn't know some of these titles were on their way. Sleeping Dogs is getting a new title. The Deus Ex games are coming to next gen, as well as a new game is coming. Final Fantasy 15, which we were talking about, which is going to incorporate the Kingdom Hearts engine.
Yeah, which is what Nomura has been working on for the past few years, which is why Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't being worked on.
Yes, but now Kingdom Hearts 3 is being worked on, and that's a big expectation. I mean, I still remember watching E3 last year, and everybody's just eyes dropped. My wife went from like her favorite sitcom on the TV, and she heard the music come on, and she rushed into the room, and she just jaw dropped the entire time. That's how you know you've got a good idea. And then also that we've got a next-gen Hitman. So I like the idea that Square Enix is making a turnaround, but I'm also going to stress this, and I think you kind of are on the same one. Mm-hmm. Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay? I think one of the main reasons 13 did not do well is because I've made this joke, and I'm starting to believe it. There is just a solid dark room somewhere in Square Enix where it's an altar. And it's an altar with Cloud and Sephiroth on it, and they all prayed to it and said, please be as good as this.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out that well.
Indeed. And of course, that's kind of what happens when the main guy behind the series leaves to start his own company.
Pretty much, and then became an advisor at some points.
Yeah.
Mistwalker didn't do really well for him. Plus, a lot of that also is Tetsuya Nomura is one of the bigger developers there now, and that's where he got his start, was 7. Mm-hmm. So this is another big thing, and strangely enough, I mean, he's part of the Kingdom Hearts universe, too. He's the person we credit for that.
Yeah, because he was the one who basically developed a lot of the key ideas that made Kingdom Hearts successful, especially considering a lot of the original ideas that both Disney and Square wanted.
Hey, you know, and I'm not going to fault him for it, because I am a Final Fantasy fan through and through, and while I do believe that Kingdom Hearts has not done right by those characters, I always hold true the hope that maybe we will get some Final Fantasy-inspired worlds, or there will be an even darker council, and it will be all Final Fantasy villains. I'm waiting for that day, and it will never happen, Romney.
It probably won't happen, especially given that a lot of the original characters in Kingdom Hearts have pretty much taken a life on their own, that even the Disney characters have kind of been taking a backseat to the whole thing.
Even Cloud has his own mythos that is Kingdom Hearts separate, and so at that point, I don't ever think that will happen, but dude, do something for the Final Fantasy fans. If you just put in like a Midgar reference here and there, I'll look for it. I'll look for it just to see if you're honorable to it.
And I guess it just really, first their main priority is wrapping up the Xehanort arc that was pretty much been told.
Which this will do.
Which Kingdom Hearts 3 will do, and even he said, like, yeah, there will still be more of a story. It'll just bring things back down to Sora will be the main character in any future stuff. And so, hopefully, after they wrap up the Xehanort arc, maybe we may get the Final Fantasy stuff, maybe not. Who knows?
Exactly. So, in the meantime, we do need to take our final break of the hour. When we get back, we'll wrap up our thoughts on this week's level of stories, and then we'll start hinting towards the entertainment hour. And, man, do we have a few things to talk about there. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions continues. Welcome back, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. So let's just go ahead and wrap up the tech hour here. So we got the 4 stories that we've been talking about. Nintendo's being sued, but they're hopeful. They've got some ideas for the future, and they want to bring this to E3. I was actually very happy when I heard they're coming to E3. I really do think they need to come.
Yeah, their announcement video, though, I don't know. I kind of checked out after a while with the whole Reggie Mech thing. I mean, an idea that sounded like...
You didn't like the Reggie Fils Mech?
Not exactly.
I loved it. But
I mean, I don't know.
It's one of those things where I applaud Reggie, because at this point he could totally close himself off, like Miyamoto kind of does, and not be willing to have himself made fun of. And now Reggie Fils-Aimé is a meme amongst Nintendo. I mean, there still is petitions that want him in Smash Brothers, that want him in Mario Kart. They wanted a Reggie Fils-Aimé character in Skyward Sword. He's everywhere. I still, to this day, I will find a wallpaper that actually works for my PC where it's the Smash Brothers announcement. Reggie, his body is ready. And I will applaud people that actually do that. Like Kaz Hirai does it, and I'm trying to remember the other one. It's Sony that did it. He was part of the whole, this is how we allow you to share games for PS4.
Yeah.
And he's been there for a while. But I love it when people do that. I also love the Sony news. That shows me they have passion for their product. And frankly, I have a little bit more faith for them than I do with Microsoft. It just seems to me like they care a little bit more, compared to previous years where they haven't treated the indie developers all that well.
Yeah.
They've tried to bring in cell processors and things like that to make a, quote, better system. And it didn't work out all that well for them. So I like the fact that they're kind of having the humility moment here and saying, okay, well, but we believe in this product still, and we still want to give you something good.
Yeah.
Good on them. What are your thoughts on Nintendo and Sony's moves thus far, especially as we're going into E3? You know.
Well, I don't really know what to say. I mean, with Nintendo, well, from what I've been seeing, even coming from their channel, they're really banking on the new Smash Brothers being the one that kind of pulls them back into the... Not sure if it would be termed in the red or in the black. I'm not sure how those financial terms work.
It's in the black.
But basically they're really banking on the new Smash Brothers being a big hit.
Yeah, they want the big multiplayer hit that they had with the Wii. I mean, when Smash Brothers Brawl came out, and then also with Mario Kart Wii, those were big multiplayer properties, and so they're really banking on not just Smash Brothers, but Mario Kart 8 being able to pull themselves back into the black. I think they will, but I also think you need another big title.
Yeah.
And I can't help but go back to Reggie when he went to, I can't remember what the end of the year game trailer thing they did last year, where Reggie came out and he had a little Samus on his lapel. And so at that point, I really hope that either we get a big Zelda announcement or we get a big Metroid announcement for the Wii U.
I'd assume probably Metroid, because they always have a little bit of buffer room between Zelda games, and Link Between Worlds came out last year, so...
Yeah, I mean, there is a Zelda being worked on for Wii U. We know that. But
especially with Hyrule Warriors, the spin-off that's also being developed.
Yes. And you know what? I'm not big on that, but I'll play it. It's Zelda. I'll play it.
I'm just curious to see what other characters they get for that one, because, I mean, you can't just have only Links running around, because with Dynasty Warriors, they don't have you just playing as Zhao Yun
I didn't
all
even
the time.
think about that, because I totally thought, you justified just putting Link in there. That would be cool if they justified, like, Sheik, or Ganondorf,
or Midna.
Or Midna. There are a lot of characters in the franchise that we could go back to. Even Impa would work.
Yeah, or even Darunia, like getting to play as a Goron in battle.
Gosh. Dude, that would be a meme brought to life. Holy crap, to bring Darunia into it. I agree with you. I think it's going to be Metroid. But I will say this, and I've said it a couple of weeks ago, I have no problem if it's a Team Ninja main Metroid game. If they do it that way, fine.
Fix the story.
Fix the story a little bit, make it localized a little bit better, but at the same time, they're respectful to the character in some ways. I mean, like I said, in the Smash Brothers thing, their Zero Suit wasn't freaking lingerie or a bikini, okay? They were respectful to Samus compared to their staple of characters.
Yeah, especially I think it was more a case of we're handling a Nintendo property, meaning that the pressure was probably piling up as well.
Pretty much. So at that point, I'm not so worried about it. The Microsoft news doesn't really get me involved. I mean, it's great and all, but...
It was only a matter of time, really.
Yeah, exactly. This is just them trying to get a price cut so they're on even footing with the PS4. And then the Square Enix news for me, I don't know about you, Romney, it was good news for me.
Well,
because I do not want to see some of these companies go away.
Well, yeah, and especially given in the wake of all these companies talking about how they're losing a lot of money and all this stuff, it's good to get some good news once in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah, hopefully Spike Chunsoft will get some good news in the near future, because they're currently campaigning to get some of their other titles released, like the Attack on Titan 3DS game.
Yes, the other company that I'm really worried for it in the coming years is Capcom.
Yeah.
Capcom really doesn't have a whole lot of stuff going for it, and if Mighty No. 9 does well, I don't think Inafune is going to do anything with Capcom. I think they burned the bridge.
Yeah.
So at that point, they have to really work things out, and Double Helix can't work with them anymore, which means no Strider.
Well, yeah, they pretty much pulled all titles that were being worked on by other companies in the wake of how much money they lost over Resident Evil 6. So Capcom's really desperate to get their house in order. Their Ace Attorney titles are going strong. I just wish they'd come up with a frickin' release date for Ace Attorney versus Professor Layton for the US already.
I have some news on that, but I can't tell you. Anyway, so in the meantime, but we actually do need to take a quick break. When we get back with the entertainment hour, Romney, we got a few things to talk about. First of all, we've got the Power Rangers reboot. This is a couple weeks old, but we have to talk about it.
Indeed.
We're also going to be talking about Ben Affleck. The Batman costume and the Batmobile were revealed.
The sad Batman.
Oh yes, the very sad Batman. He needs some Prozac pretty dang quick. The director for Star Trek 3 got announced, and we'll get into that a little bit because people have been wondering if JJ was going to make things work to do both. And I already could tell you, no, it's not.
Well, yeah, and I know that I already could kind of tell when they said that they hired a new writer for the third film as well, because like the third writer I think was both the writer and director of Attack the Block. That's the person they brought in to help write the script, especially given how the two screenwriters that worked with Abrams took their sweet time doing Into Darkness. Paramount's not too happy.
Yep. And then we're also going to be doing kind of a double story here, because it was kind of small news after that, but we are going to be talking about I want to say the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, but that's not it. It's the new Harry Potter movie, Fantastic Creatures and Where to Find Them.
With Newt Scamander.
Which we got a release date for, plus we got some interesting X-Men news, in fact, that we're going with Gambit again. So we'll be talking about that in the entertainment hour. But in the meantime, we're going to take a break. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as more geek news, reviews, and opinions come straight at you.
trying to misbehave.
If you test me, you will fail.
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear. That comes later.
Okay, look, we both said a lot of things that you're going to regret. But I think we can put our differences behind us.
You thought this was over? But we've only just begun to geek out. Welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions.
Welcome back, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. I know that we're not actually showing the snazzy intros that we have, but unfortunately, you're going to have to pardon our dust on this one. And the other additional news for people who are just barely joining us, this is not only going to be an audio. You will not have to deal with a slideshow fest from me. That was the one thing that actually kind of bothered me with the YouTube release, was I just decided to do pictures. And
slideshow.
Well, it's either that or I show our logo for an hour, and I'm just not willing to do that. But in the meantime, welcome everybody to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. Welcome Romney. Again, to people who are just joining us. Aldo's not able to join us this week, but he will be back next week. And thankfully, you all got the announcement about the time change. Our live broadcast will now be on Thursdays between 6 and 8 p.m., which we're very excited about, especially since we get a little bit of a break now that summer is in full swing for us. And I don't know about your break, but my break is just catching up on everything that I wasn't able to do in the semester.
My case is just job hunting, really.
Pretty much. And once again, congratulations on Romney for graduating. We look forward to seeing what you are going to be doing in the future. But as much as we would like to talk about your graduation and moving on and all that stuff, let's talk about some retro, shall we?
Indeed.
Let's do it. So we've got plenty of nice stories, and one of which I am totally excited to be reporting on is the Power Rangers reboot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, guys, this is a couple of weeks old, but it's worth it, dang it!
Saban Brands and Lionsgate teaming up to do a live-action reboot. I'm both excited and worried at the same time.
See, here's my worry on the matter. I'll be perfectly honest with you, Romney. My worry is very simple. It's Lionsgate. And Lionsgate has a kind of a bad habit of going back into their staple of actors. And so here's the thing. If you want to bring in Jennifer Lawrence as a Power Ranger, I have no problem with it as long as it works.
As long as it works.
But there will be no bringing in Robert Pattinson as Tommy. It's not happening.
I'd see him more as Billy, to be honest. He'd probably do an okay job as Billy.
Duly noted. I actually agree with you on that one, but double or nothing since, he's Edward. Either that or the guy who played Jacob in Twilight.
He would be more likely to be brought in as Tommy or as Jason.
He'd be more Jason, but
I doubt they're going to be bringing the Twilight roster just for the sake of Kristen Stewart's no longer a major draw. Robert Pattinson's struggling to become more of a draw, although he's kind of earned his artistic credibility with some of the other films he's got on deck. Taylor Lautner, you don't see him in anything anymore.
No, I really do think
the latest film he's been in was Grown Ups 2. That's how bad it's gotten.
Pretty much. I mean, there's a staple of actors that they can go to, but really I just want to see them bring in some new people. I actually saw some people getting mad because, oh my gosh, you're not going to go talk to the original cast.
Well, the thing is, not everyone on the original cast would be willing to go back. I mean, Amy Jo Johnson doesn't look back on it.
Well, Train can't even come back. So
not
unless somebody wants to go and get the Necronomicon. I mean, it's not rest in peace, Train.
And especially when you hear about the news about how badly how bad it was for David Yost when he was working with it. He's not going to want to come back either. I mean, even him appearing at conventions is a big deal.
If they brought him in as part of the production cast, though, I'd have no problem with that.
Well, yeah,
that would be
then it's also a case of you have some actors that are members of SAG, some that aren't. That was the main reason why you had the actors for Trini, Jason, and Zach leave the show in the first place. It's because the show was non-union. They were trying to make it union. And so I think the only people they would probably be able to get to come back, and it would depend on whether it would be a union job or not. And it would basically, if it's a union, you'd be getting Walter Jones. If it's non-union, you'd be getting Jason David Frank.
Yes. And at that point, that's why I'm part of a wonderful campaign where we actually just need to get Jason Frank in just to do Stan Lee cameos in the Power Rangers movies. Just do it, because you know he'd be more than willing to do it.
Well, yeah, the main thing I'm worried about personally is that I'm worried that we may end up with another case similar to the first Power Rangers movie where the studio people just had no idea what the show was about or what they were doing.
I'm worried about that too.
That's the main thing I'm worried about. Given that Saban is actually, it's not just a case of, Lionsgate got the rights, but Saban is actually working with Lionsgate, the fears are partially allayed, but again...
Well, but see, here's the thing, too. I haven't heard any of the any of the Saban people, like, for example, Jonathan Zacher. I've heard nothing being talked to him to come back, or Ron Wasserman to come back and do music.
They should at least bring Koichi Sakamoto as a consultant.
Yes, and so I haven't heard any of this stuff, and that's been my biggest worry. I actually, up until yesterday, didn't even hear that this was a Mighty Morphin reboot, because everything that I had read just said Power Rangers reboot, and then I finally found the actual press release that said Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Well, yeah, given that they've kind of squandered what opportunity they had with the 20th anniversary, again, not knocking anybody who are fans of Megaforce. No. I mean, I've seen
Super. I mean, the fact that they're going back into the nostalgia roots, I think, is a fine idea, but
to be honest, Megaforce is actually better than Samurai, in my opinion.
They both have problems to me, and that's just because they have one thing in a Power Ranger series that bugs me, and that's preachiness. And
well, of course, given the original Sentai series is known for its preachiness as well, so...
True. Like, for example, one of the biggest culprits of it was Wild Force, and I actually kind of like Wild Force, except when I have a 10-year-old preaching to me.
Yeah, again, the main issue was that was when Jonathan Zacher was campaigning to try to have the Power Rangers series be more like the Sentai series they're based on.
Yes.
That was the main problem with Samurai, is that it was too similar to Shin Kendra with some translation stuff not transitioning over. That's kind of the main issue that I even have with Power Rangers nowadays, given that I've seen a lot of the Sentai series these are based on now. I have a hard time watching. Like, I've seen Goseiger, I've seen Gokaiger, that's why I have a hard time watching Megaforce.
Exactly. So, I mean, first of all, I'm excited for this reboot. I'm interested to see what Lionsgate is going to do. I want to hear more Saban announcements, or even, like I said, David Yost, bring him in as a production guy, or bring him in as an advisor. I have no problem with that either. Or bring in Jason David Frank to come in and kind of advise on whether or not you're going to do this.
Well, yeah, and Koichi Sakamoto has done film direction before, so even bringing him as a director would actually be a good idea. He's directed films for the U.S. before.
But the one question that I did see getting asked a lot online, and it actually has to be asked, one of the veins of the original movie that I liked as a kid and I don't like now, don't redo the outfits. Just let the classic ones kind of shine. I didn't like those outfits.
Well,
the armored ones that looked like they were paintball gear in some cases.
I could kind of somewhat argue for maybe a redesign in the outfits, only to a certain extent, depending on if they're going to be sticking with the dinosaur motif, or if throughout the series they're actually going to try working designs that actually reflect the changed Zords, because the big thing a lot of people were rallying around with Megaforce is how they were introducing the Die Ranger outfits as one of the transformations, even though there's never been an adaptation of Die Ranger here in the U.S., except for the White Ranger outfit. And so, if they do the designs right, that still is faithful to the basic aesthetic of the original Power Rangers or even the original Zoo Ranger series, I wouldn't be against an update to the outfits if it's not like grim, dark, turn it all black and
please don't. Look, this is not one of those series where anti-heroes works.
No, it isn't.
Everybody needs... Look, I know people don't or laugh at the concept that everybody on Power Rangers was a freaking goody-good. That's one of the appeals. That's what actually made characters like Bulk and Skull better, because the goody-goods, you knew they were going to do good things, but you were kind of wondering about Bulk and Skull, constantly trying to be better kind of thing. So I think in one of these cases where the mediums right now are totally saturated in anti-heroes, do not go anti-hero on this one.
Well, yeah, and I can understand, like, maybe trying to make the characters more like actual teenagers. That I can understand. And as for the suit redesign, as long as it's faithful to the heart of the initial stuff, if they actually, heck, if they even bring in people from Toei to design the suits, I'd be fine with that.
Oh, I'd totally be fine with that.
That's just kind of the key thing. I mean, redesigns aren't inherently bad, so long as they're actually being redesigned from a place of passion, from an actual understanding of what made it work, and not like what we saw with the first Power Rangers movie, where the people had no idea what they were doing, and even considered not even having the faces covered.
Oh, yes. That's one of the things that irritated me about those outfits, is that they were going to do visorless, and then somebody had to come in and go, that's not how it works, guys. That's not how it works. And even then, the production staff went, well, we're going to branch out from it. No, it doesn't work.
Especially when it comes to the stunt stuff that you need to have done. There's a reason that the faces are covered. That way you can have stunt people do the stunts. That's the main problem with the live-action Sailor Moon series that they tried. Because they couldn't do stunts, it wasn't as good.
Exactly. You need to be able to do that. The other thing that I've seen as kind of a controversy is whether or not to make this a literal reboot. You don't have even the same names as the cast. I have no problem if they do the original names. Just put the right actor in front of them. You know, in that case, I don't have a problem if you go do, the whole racist ranger controversy. If you want to do that, that's fine.
Yeah, it could even be lampshaded, to be honest.
You could totally make a joke out of that. I mean, seriously. And you should! That's why College Humor made one.
Well, yeah, and even if it isn't the same exact characters, but just a reboot of the concept, and even if it is a case of, it's modern day, but it's a different set of characters, I'm fine with that so long as it's written well, because that's the appeal with the Sentai series, that's the reason they have the characters and motifs change every so often, is that way things don't get drawn out and stale, and even with new characters, you can still explore different things, and so...
Exactly.
Even that... I mean, heck, they could even pull sort of the whole time-traveling, having one of the Rangers like Jason David Frank time travel, but because of the fact that the time differed, he'd have to recruit the new Ranger or something. They could even make something like that.
Even go the Dino Thunder route and make him a mentor. I have no problem with that either. That actually goes into my next question, and then we're going to need to take a break. Mentors and villains, actually. We have kind of established mentors and things like that. Do we bring back Zordon and Alpha 5? Do we bring back Rita as the villain?
Yeah, that's a tricky thing. I mean, on the one hand, there's the faithfulness of bringing back Rita Repulsa, but personally, at least based on my memory of the series, Lord Zed was definitely a stronger villain. And so even if they were to start with Lord Zed, even have that be kind of the... Because they've done time travel stuff with Lord Zed before. I mean, with the Power Rangers game, Super Legends, they could even use that as kind of a jumping off point with how... But, yeah, I mean... It really depends.
I almost think they go the Zed route, because the Zed was a U.S.-made villain. I mean, and they did a lot of effort into that costume, and that voice actor, I can't remember the name of the voice. Robert Axelrod. I know he said he would come back and play Zed if they gave him a reason. So at that point, that'd be a really great motivation, but at the same time, I don't have a problem with them bringing back Rita either, because the actress who plays her has no problem coming back either.
True, but even then, that would be the same case. Would they even be bringing back the same talent to play... I mean, that is easy to dub over, but you definitely need a certain type of actress, aside from the first U.S. actress, because they can't actually bring back the Japanese actress, because she passed away quite a ways back around the time of Maji Ranger, so it's definitely a tricky thing. I mean, if they go with Rita, they'll definitely need to find the right kind of actress who can bring in the sort of gravitas and not hold back with their performance sort of thing that Rita Repulsa calls for.
Exactly. I mean, I even know that the actress who played her after... when she did her whole Mystic Force cameo in there, she was disappointed because it just didn't feel like Rita. And I've seen that abomination, and it's not Rita.
Yeah.
It may be Bruce Kalish's interpretation of Rita, but it's not that. So if you're going to do Rita, then bring back Rita in full hammy force.
Well, yeah, because that's kind of just one of the problems of adapting a series, because with the Japanese actress's cameo in Maji Ranger, they weren't trying to connect it to Zoo Ranger. It was just it was supposed to be more of a subtle nod to the diehard Sentai fans,
Pretty much.
Not really try to kind of explain, because the idea is that each series kind of takes place in its own separate canon. The only crossover...
Yeah, the only time they ever tried to merge it was the whole Zordon era. That was it.
Well, yeah, and even with the Sentai series, the only exception to the whole them not being in the separate universe is that the Gokaiger series exists in the universe where all the crossovers happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, but in the meantime, we do need to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to be talking about deep and depressing and dark and need Prozac, like Ben Affleck in his new Batman costume. Because I do not agree with Kevin Smith. It does not look awesome. But we'll get to that in a second. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions continues. Welcome back, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. So let's go ahead and get into the big DC news that happened this week. Kevin Smith, I don't know if you remember this, a couple of months ago actually said he had seen the Batman costume for Ben Affleck, and he was excited. He liked it. Now we can see the Batman costume as well as the Batmobile reboot.
Yep.
And I'm not excited.
I'm kind of on the fence.
I'm trying very hard to be excited for Batman versus Superman, but to me it looks like they kind of are taking from the Schumacher era and making it very tight rubber, but at the same time, one of the things that bothers me, and it may just be my own aesthetic, is the ears on the costume aren't huge. And look, even Christian Bale, who reestablished that continuity, they still had pretty high looking ears.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't go that route, but we finally got the tease for them. I haven't actually seen a full-on picture of what the Batmobile is going to look like, just the upper shell of it, basically the hood.
Yeah, the framing is pretty close, so... Well.
Yeah, so at that point, I mean, are we excited for what Ben Affleck looks like? It looks like he just needs Prozac, man. I'm finding it very hard to look at that and not be depressed a little bit.
Well, I mean, have you seen all the GIFs that have just been attached to the whole depressed Batman thing that have sprung up?
I've seen pieces here and there. Are you talking I've seen some demotivational posters where Batman, it's okay, cheer up, Prozac's here or whatever.
Well, one I saw is Batman pushing an empty swing that's got the same thing. There was a whole series of them Ben Affleck is a very sad Batman, and
he is.
And it was I don't know which site it was. I think it might have been BuzzFeed, but they just showed a series of GIFs that had been made. And
it's too much emphasis on the brooding. I mean, even when he played Daredevil, he wasn't brooding that badly. I mean, even the posters where he was standing up proud kind of thing. Yeah. This one just makes me think, oh, well, Batman's just going to be off in the background and hanging out in the corner and be sad. Crawling in my skin. I was hoping you would go there. All right. So, and truth be told, there isn't enough of the Batmobile to be excited. I mean, it looks like you're taking 3 different inspirations for the Batmobile. One being the animated series, one being the Tim Burton films, and probably the other one being a little bit more into the Nolan films, where it looks like it's tankish.
Yeah, kind of trying to bring in the best of each one. I mean, I'm still kind of worried about the film, not really because of any of the design stuff, but just because of the fact that it's Zack Snyder and David S. Goyer. That's what worries me.
And that's kind of, I mean, you and I have talked about this. That's my worry, too. And on top of that, I just want to kind of emphasize this. It's not because Ben Affleck is playing Batman. I think he can pull it off, especially since it really looks like we're going for kind of the Dark Knight Returns Batman instead of, the Christian Bale Batman kind of thing. And at that point, this might work, and I don't have a doubt that Ben Affleck can pull it off. I had no problem with him as Matt Murdock.
Yeah.
The problem that I have here is the big freaking director's chair and Zack Snyder. And, I think Aldo was the one that was bringing it up. It's just going to be one big fight. They're going to destroy an entire city, and then that's how Wonder Woman gets involved. And I don't want to see that again. This is the Trinity here. Even, when Superman and Batman were having arguments, they both kind of agreed to be genuinely good guys when it came to being under the cowl.
Yeah.
So, I'll admit, that was one of my biggest beefs with Man of Steel, is that when all is said and done, and all the destruction has happened, and don't get me wrong, the combat scene was cool.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to see Superman start to pick up afterwards, like he does, like the Superman that I've known for so long does. He tries to fix things. He tries to get people out of the debris, and they didn't do anything like that. They just cut right to the aftermath a month later, and at that point they missed out on a real opportunity. One of which I think I've even brought it up to you. I think Captain America capitalized on, because he actually came off as a better good guy in the end of Winter Soldier than Henry Cavill did as Man of Steel.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Your thoughts on this overall, Romney? I know that Snyder's the big problem we have here. But...
Yeah, I think it's kind of we're beating a dead horse at this point, because we've both made it clear that we're uneasy about Zack Snyder.
But what about Affleck?
Affleck? I'm cautiously optimistic. Mostly, I mean, it's kind of the case of we either end up with another George Clooney or we end up with another Michael Keaton, because people thought the same thing. Oh, Michael Keaton, the comedy actor, why are they casting him as Batman?
Yeah.
And he turned out to do a really good job, although I definitely kind of wish I could see the alternate universe in which Bill Murray got the part, because Tim Burton initially wanted Bill Murray to play Batman.
Oh my gosh. I'm thinking about that in my head. Oh, that'd be bad.
Well, yeah.
And this is actually saying something, because I was about to point out, well, you'd know, because this is one of the things that the fans have a problem with me, is I haven't seen the Keaton Batmans. So,
Oh.
my first one was Batman Forever, and I still think Val Kilmer did a good job. It's just, unfortunately he wasn't paired right with the other actors. Chris O'Donnell, I think, actually detracted from Val, whereas with George Clooney, Chris actually improved it.
Yeah, but again, that's just kind of the case with Affleck as Batman. It's kind of the case of I'm going to hold off until I start seeing actual trailers of him actually trying to act as Batman, because all we've seen has been visual stuff, and let's face it, with Ben Affleck, unless he's given the right role, he's not necessarily known for emoting. No. I mean, he was recently kicked out of a casino. I mean, he's known for playing poker, although he was kicked out for counting cards, not necessarily because he didn't emote, but he's known for having a pretty good poker face. And so, until I actually see him starting to act like Batman, I'm going to withhold judgment. So, we've got a while before the trailers start coming. I mean,
you and I have both brought this up. It would have been a really great reveal if Ben Affleck was the director for Justice League.
Yeah, everybody was hoping for that.
Yeah, exactly, because you could easily justify that. I mean, how many times did we see in the Justice League comics, Superman, we need your help, whomever is trying to destroy the city. I'm busy with meteorites. Call up Batman. Batman, can you help us? I'm busy in Gotham. Bye. You could easily have done that with Ben Affleck and then just say, he's in the director's chair.
Yeah.
You got your cameo. And so I agree with you. I actually would have liked him to be the director, because all the stuff I've seen him direct, he's fine. I have no problem with him as a director. It's just this whole... I don't think the Dark Knight Returns Batman is the way to go for him.
Yeah.
You might, I hate even to say this, I mean, you might have to just reboot, not actually go after comics for him to imitate. You might just have to have him make his own Bruce Wayne instead of emulate Frank Miller stuff, which we've already proven Zach doesn't even...
Yeah.
For as crazy as Frank Miller is, you've got some problems there.
Indeed.
And so,
I mean, I personally liked Daredevil as a kid, so I can see he probably can do a decent Batman. It's just, again, I guess it really just kind of falls to how he does it as an actor. Does he try to copy what's worked in the past and then crash and burn as a false imitation, or does he risk giving his own original spin on it? Now that you've also got the Gotham series starting up, that may also kind of mess with how people perceive Batman as well, because Gotham is pretty much, Smallville, except with Batman. Mm-hmm. Although it looks a little bit better, though, since it's Jim Gordon. But
seriously, Romney, it's not hard to imitate Batman. It's more of an imitation problem when you're imitating Bane, because then I will break you.
Yeah, then you can do the Michael Keaton. He just talks like this.
Exactly.
I'm Batman.
Or you could go the Val Kilmer route, which is, I'm going to be dark and brooding, but I'm going to talk as little as possible.
Or you just do the George Clooney. You just do the George Clooney.
Yeah.
I'm George Clooney.
I'm George Clooney. This is why Superman doesn't have a sidekick. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the next story, which is the announcement of the Star Trek 3 director. Now, I know a lot of people online were like, JJ's going to do a double job, and both of them are going to be horrible. And I was like one of those people going, that'd be cool. It's not going to happen, though.
Yeah.
JJ will devote himself to Star Wars or Star Trek, one of the two, and that'll just be the bottom line. But now we've actually been announced that Roberto Orci, I think I'm saying his name right, is going to direct Star Trek 3. He was, I believe, one of the writers on Into Darkness. So he was with Alex Kurtz. Is it Alex Kurtzman?
I believe so.
So the fact that they're staying within house doesn't bother me, but it does make me worry, because as much as I'm happy for JJ, he gave me Klingons in Into Darkness, and I kind of want him to come back and do a Klingon movie.
Yeah, well, he gave Klingons, but he also didn't do a good job with Khan, so...
True. Well, for me, he did a good job, but that was just because I haven't seen the original series.
Well, and even as someone who hasn't seen the original series, just the third act of that film was where everything just fell apart.
I didn't mind it so much. I get that they were trying to not imitate Wrath of Khan so much, more along the lines of imitate the episode that Khan featured in Space Seed. But I'll admit, there were some things that were kind of dinky, like I actually didn't mind the reverse of that. I just was like, What, really? Do we need to go into the Shatner territory?
Well, yeah, it's just Spock as a character had no reason to shout like that. Because in the original scene, Khan was, like, specifically imitating and trying to get a rise out of Kirk.
He had very loose reasoning to do it. I mean, they constantly kind of inferred the fact that this Spock is more emotional because he can't keep his emotions in check. And it's still not... I agree with you. It still doesn't work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's how they tried to do the inference there. Also, the miracle blood. I'll admit, looking back on that now, that was a cop-out.
Well, yeah, the Miracle Blood, the old Spock cameo to basically explain...
or the insert cheat code right there.
Yeah, especially given that they've basically built up Khan as, not so much as a villain, but just kind of an uneasy ally, because that's how they built it up. And Khan, everybody thinks, oh yeah, Khan was a sudden surprise villain all along. No, his anger is justified. Kirk turned on him at the start of the third act. I can see why he's pissed off.
Pretty much, and I actually like the fact you brought up the Spock reference, because I was thinking the entire movie was freaking awesome, and then that scene happened, and I went, you better not ask. Because if you ask, this is going to turn real bad. Because you're going to know everything, and you shouldn't. And in fact, in a lot of cases, the part that I had with that scene was, I have told you before, Spock, that I will not infer to any history that I've had.
But...
Click. That's the problem I had, but in this case, I think in all honesty, he should have just gone, click. And just leave it there and keep Spock hanging. Because even at that point, a lot is inferred just by that sentence, because of how grave he's saying it. So at that point, you can say, okay, he's sounding very grave, you still have a big situation here. So overall, with Roberto Orci, I don't have a problem with it. I just want to see what they're going to do with Star Trek 3.
Yeah. Personally, I'm hoping for a mirror universe story, because I figured that'd be an interesting thing to explore in that new universe, seeing kind of a new
threat. Yeah,
like a new threat, and kind of seeing how a mirror version of the Chris Pine Kirk would play off of, and the camera cut.
But I agree with you. I think that would be a good idea to bring in a new race that maybe we haven't heard anything about, or even better, how about bringing in, I don't know, Vulcans? Bring in a race that we know is good, and goody two-shoes and all that, and then all of a sudden have them turn. Because in this universe, Vulcans are justified in wanting genocide here. They had genocide put upon them.
Yep.
So that would be an interesting concept, but I'll admit, I still want the Klingon storyline.
Yeah.
I still want Klingons.
There's a lot of places that they could go with it, just hopefully they'll actually do an okay job with it, and not just, oh, we'll just do random fan service and then try to imitate one of the other previous films.
Gee, and people were so frustrated with that when Zoe Saldana, and then later the girl who played I can't remember her name now, the Admiral's daughter. And I'm sorry, but you knew that this was Kirk era. There was going to be something, you know? You knew that it was going to be Kirk era, and granted, you had a couple other moments, but I still am not going to fault this series for what they tried to do. But I do agree with you. If they did like a mirror, since this is a mirror universe, do another twist. You know, like have I'm trying to remember the blue guys in Star Trek. Have them be the main villain, where there hasn't really been a whole lot of feature. Don't just do like what Enterprise did and have the Borg come out of nowhere.
Yeah, that would just be. Yeah,
that's just jumping the shark right there.
Indeed.
You just want Chris Pine taking on the Borg, and he's not next gen, so he's Kirk. Kirk would have other things to be worrying about.
Yeah.
But that's just me. In the meantime, though, we do need to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get into the other two stories of this week. They're not too huge, but we've got some thoughts on them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions continues. Welcome back, everybody, to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions right here on Radio SLCC, your online student source. So let's go ahead and get into the last stories of the week. We had a few here, but again, aside from the Batman announcement and the Power Rangers announcement that came out last week, we had a Flintstones reboot, but I'm not going to go into it because there's
not much to really go into.
Yeah, exactly. Seth MacFarlane's not part of it. So the first thing that we had was Harry Potter news, and last year I got a little bit of flack for reporting on fantastic creatures and where to find them and not really going too much into it. Again, I stand by my defense of it's a textbook. There's not a whole lot to know yet.
Yeah, that, and there's also just a case they haven't made any major announcements. All that we know is that Kevin Tsujihara is desperately trying to get it off the ground. J.K. Rowling's writing the script. But other than that, we've got nothing.
Pretty much. And that was kind of one of the problems that I had with it, is that it's based on a textbook. So what are people expecting me to say? This is a sequel to Harry. We're actually going to see him become an Auror? No, because Dan's not even part of it.
Yeah, and plus this takes place before, almost hundreds of years before Harry Potter, from what I've read.
Pretty much.
Because apparently it takes place in, the 1900s.
The only connection, guys, is that it's a textbook in the Harry Potter universe, and it's set in the Harry Potter universe. That's all we have. So, I get that people had a problem with the fact that I didn't report too much about it, but
there's nothing there.
There's nothing there yet. We don't know the cast yet. We don't know what they're going to be focusing on. All we know at this point is a release date, which is in, I think it was summer of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, it was November of 2016, so it was going to be a winter movie. So that gives them plenty of time to work on it. Am I saying I'm not excited for it? No, I'll go see it. I saw the Harry Potter movies and
yeah, it's just a case of there's not much to really talk about because we've got nothing. All we know is that Tsujihara is the producer, Rowling's writing the script, and the title. And this is very much Kevin Tsujihara's effort to try to get whatever franchises he can to work, because the Harry Potter franchise was the most successful franchise Warner Brothers had. And given that DC doesn't have its house in order, Tsujihara was basically reaching for whatever he can to try to get a franchise off the ground, because he's trying to establish himself as
he wants to be the guy that saved Warner Brothers.
Yeah, he's trying to be the Kevin Feige of Warner Brothers, basically.
And at this point, that's a big deal, because now, we're getting to a point where I think it was Batman vs. Superman is going to be tackling Captain America 3 head on.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it is going to be Disney versus Warner Brothers. We're actually going to have that conflict.
Well, yeah, because they're also doing the conflict with the upcoming Peter Pan versions. There's Disney's producing one, and Warner Brothers is producing one as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even so far, Disney and Warner Brothers are clashing not only with the superhero films, but they've got the upcoming Peter Pan films clashing and the upcoming Jungle Book films clashing as well.
Yeah, so at this point, it really is just going to be Disney and Warner Brothers showing off who's better, who's got the better properties, things like that.
They should already just make an animation where it's just Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse with boxing gloves. They should just go ahead and do that.
I forgot the Looney Tunes are Warner Brothers property. That actually would be pretty freaking awesome. And then at that point, I'd have to eat crow, guys, because then I was the one that said a couple of weeks ago you would never see them ever again in a film. I'd be wrong at that point, now wouldn't I?
Yeah, of course they would probably have to do the fake rumor King Kong vs. Godzilla thing where one version has Bugs winning, the other version has Mickey winning, but even then...
Yeah, that'd be a great thing to do, but I'd want a story behind it, and... yeah, I just don't see it happening. The biggest thing that I saw in comic news was that the Avengers were going to be facing off against what looked like a Justice League hybrid, and I thought that might be interesting, but that's just pandering at this point. They're just really kind of setting things up to have Marvel and DC go head-to-head, and at that point, I really don't want head-to-head here. I just want good stories, because both DC and Marvel are capable of doing it, but...
Yeah.
You have to give them the motivation to do it, not competition. Competition can be a good motivation, not for these two particular companies, though.
Indeed. And again, there's a difference between trying to just put out quality product to outdo your competition and then basically doing a sandbox fight, basically, like two kids on the playground.
See, and I'll even admit, when the Marvel vs. DC comic came out, I'm not saying the Amalgam Universe was a good thing. I'm saying Marvel vs. DC, that comic was pretty freaking cool in some moments. So at that point, and I know, guys, it was a poll. They basically said, who do you want to win between Captain America and Batman? And I get that whole concept.
Batman faced off against the Hulk, didn't he?
No, he faced off against Captain America. In fact, he saved him.
Huh.
Yeah, they were fighting in a sewer, and Cap does the Cap thing and basically says, why are we fighting? And then they get attacked by... I can't remember what it was, like a sewer monster or something like that, and Batman ends up saving Captain America.
Yeah, because I know that there was the whole thing with Access as well, which is the one character that both DC and Marvel own. If they were to try to do that as a film version, that would definitely be a character they would need to get hammered down right. But even then, the business politics between even the comic companies themselves is a very scary place.
Pretty much. And it gets even worse, especially in these current continuities. But,
yes.
even then... still, in my opinion, one of the best moments of that comic actually was when Thor and Captain Marvel were getting ready to face off. And the way they basically both explained to each other where they got their powers, and it's big, and it's bold, and it's awesome. And then finally they just sit there and go, well, before we have this epic conclusion, let us pray to our respective gods. And it was actually a really well-drawn panel of both of them just kind of sitting there even with each other and praying, that they're going to win. That was a cool moment. To put those two very bombastic heroes against each other and then have them be as bombastic as they could be. Yeah. So I will say Marvel and DC had the potential to do that. Not in this current era, though. No. Not new 52 DC plus the stuff Marvel's putting out, which is, again, hit or miss.
Yeah, it's definitely a dicey area where the big two may not even... I mean, my speculation is that the big two will stop being called the big two after a while. I mean, Image is starting to rise up. Yeah. Kaboom Studios and Kaboom Comics, they've been rising up. I mean, Archie's...
With good products, by the way.
And Archie's pretty much got them both beat with a lot of the Life with Archie stuff, Afterlife with Archie.
That I've been hearing a lot about. Yeah. That was a really good turn for them.
Yeah, it's a good comic. I've read the first 2 issues, and... it's actually really, really good.
Yeah, because it's basically a zombie tale, right?
Yeah, zombies in Riverdale. So Sabrina
at that
causes
point,
the apocalypse, basically.
Guys, keep in mind, Archie has been goody good for so long, and then they finally did this to them. It shows that, a lot of the complaints that people had towards Archie comics was they would never go this dark, twisted angle. Yeah, they'll totally do it, and they'll do it well. So,
yeah, they're pulling no punches. I mean... by the second issue, you've already had pretty much most of a lot of major characters already killed off.
That's what I've heard. I haven't touched it yet because zombie things are kind of iffy for me. I'm so tired of zombies.
Well, yeah, but the way that the zombies come about in this one, they do at least a pretty good job. Although, my only complaint I have about the comic is that they're trying to kind of balance both necromancer-based zombies with viral-based zombies, the whole first Contagion
At that point, just make a decision.
Pretty much.
Are they Contagion or are they Necronomicon? I don't care which.
I mean,
maybe at that point, I do know that Ashley from Evil Dead has done stuff in Archie, so maybe bring him back.
Well, yeah, it's just from how they explain it, and again, it's not really much of a spoiler because it's the first issue, is that literally Sabrina's the cause of it all. Sabrina's the one who caused the zombies. And it's not even just a case of, it's a dumb thing. Like, the way they explain it is actually really interesting. But that's just the best way to summarize it.
No, I have no problem with that. That's actually really quirky. But let's actually go ahead and get into the other story here, which has gotten a lot of Marvel fanboys excited. Not me so much. And that is, they've confirmed that Channing Tatum, who is known for, I believe, the 21 Jump Street
21
movies.
Jump Street, Magic Mike. He'll be in Jupiter Ascending that's coming out later this year.
They've now announced that he is going to be part of the sequel film after Days of Future Past in, I think it's X-Men Apocalypse right now is his title. He is going to be playing the ever-bombastic and ever-loving Remy LeBeau. And I don't know if they should go there, because X-Men Origins did, because it was forced in, and I don't know if you should.
Well... given that Bryan Singer's been very loose with the canon, he's even gone on record saying, yeah, we know there's some discrepancies, we'll just hope audiences ignore that with Days of Future Past. And frankly, I guess it's because the bar's been set so low, I guess they're thinking, well, we've got nothing to really lose at this point.
Yeah.
Although people are already making the Gambit is a male stripper jokes.
It's Gambit. I mean, at that point, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did that in the comics at one point or another, where he's a male stripper.
Well, given a lot of people have made the comparisons of how in his solo series he was put in a lot of Escher Girls poses, so...
Yeah, the other thing also was that I've heard a lot of complaints about is that Bryan Singer is trying to incorporate the kind of the current day versus the old day Magneto in Ian McKellen's character, where it almost seems like with you remember the Magneto comic series that came out where they tried to paint Magneto in a more sympathetic light.
Yeah.
Where Ian McKellen is kind of being based off of that a little bit. And I don't have a problem. I actually like that series. I think it was a good idea because Magneto was one of those villains that you had very hard feel like you either hated him and loved to hate him, or you never wanted him to be a villain. You wanted to just have him embrace Charles and work with him.
Yeah.
And so at this point, that's the other part that I have a problem with. Don't get me wrong. I love all the Facebook and the Twitter posts that we keep getting for Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. It is awesome, and they need to continue this, okay? Well into their 90s, okay? But having this, it's one of those things that I'm really kind of worried about with the Days of Future Past story. Days of Future Past is a really good X-Men story, and can easily be screwed up.
Yeah.
Especially
they've already had to make quite a few changes now with how the time-traveling character is no longer Kitty Pryde, but now Wolverine. I mean, I guess, well, he's the big cash cow character, but...
Yeah, exactly. Or, the fact that they were really trying very hard to shoe in Bishop, and Bishop was the other time-traveling character, right? They went back
Bishop
together.
and Cable.
Yeah, so at that point, it just feels like they're kind of shoehorning him in, and they didn't figure out how are we going to do this character. That's just me. I will admit the Sentinels look pretty cool, but they don't look as daunting or evil because they're kind of human-sized, not bigger.
Yeah, well, I guess they probably figure, well, we don't want to give too much of a Napoleon complex to Trask, given that he's being played by Peter Dinklage, but...
Oh, that's such a good reveal, too. I love the fact that Peter Dinklage is coming in and playing Trask. Because that's one of those characters that, yeah, you have to hate, and Peter can get that done. I haven't seen his Game of Thrones stuff, but I've seen him in other films and TV. He gets the job done. And I've seen the scenes with Trask. Very excited. Very excited with what they're going to do. I just don't agree with a lot of the other stuff that's being said about the movie, where Jennifer Lawrence is kind of being advertised as the next Wolverine, because Hugh Jackman's not going to be there forever. I'm not saying she's bad, it's just this Mystique I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah.
This is the Mystique I'm used to with the comics and the TV series.
Well, yeah, and it's even kind of the case that they're trying to incorporate both canon, like, oh, she's the same exact character that we saw in the earlier films. If First Class... I mean, I was really hoping they were going to have First Class be the reboot, because then everything would make sense, but now that they're trying to tie everything together, it's just...
If she's the exact same character, then explain to me the Easter egg in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they had her basically take out an entire unit. It's not the same person, because even the Rebecca Romijn Stamos Mystique was way more subtle than this attempt. And also the other part that just kind of bugs me is, yes, I get it, guys, we can make the joke all we want, she's technically naked on camera, but... Guys, one of the things that made Mystique so cool in the comics was she had this outlandish outfit. She was all blue. She had the skull freaking belt. I have no problem if they go for the bombastic angle with Mystique again.
Yeah, it's just...
In this one, it's just like they're trying to make her out to be, well, for lack of a better term, the Solid Snake of the X-Men universe.
Yeah...
I don't want to make that comparison either, Romney, but, I mean, that's what they're basically doing with her. I mean, already I was kind of 50-50 on it. I also don't think Bryan Singer should have been brought back. I think Bryan already proved that he didn't have the chops. If anything, give it to the guy who did First Class.
Yeah, because I think that was Matthew Vaughn who was the director of First Class, right?
I believe so. But I thought it was a better job than last. I mean, here's my history with it. X-Men 1 had no problem with. X-Men 2 had a few problems, but it was still okay. 3, every problem with it. Origins, every problem with it. And then finally First Class, I'm like, oh, they're starting to redeem themselves.
They're starting over. They're basically thinking, look, we screwed up. Let's just start over from the beginning.
Yeah, and I had no problem with the way that they were starting over. But here's the thing, too. Bryan Singer Last Stand is the one that I will hold every problem with, and mainly because of the whole shtick with Bryan Singer leaving to go do Superman Returns.
Yeah.
And taking James Marsden with him. So that's already a big problem, but also just and I'm not going to go too deep into this, guys, the whole controversy that's surrounding him right now, maybe he shouldn't have been the guy to do your movie, because he's already been taken off of the advertisement tour.
Well, yeah, that, and given that Jack the Giant Slayer didn't do that well at the box office.
Nope.
It's just definitely a case of, maybe you should bring in a higher profile thing, because, I mean, look at what Christopher Nolan did with Batman. A lot of people think, a high profile artistic director handling a superhero. People didn't think it would work, but he made it work.
And you know what? I'm not saying that Chris Nolan should be brought in to do it, but hey, Chris Nolan and Zack Snyder did not get along very well on Man of Steel. You want to one-up Zack Snyder, Chris? Come and get a Marvel franchise and see what happens.
Yeah, but I think with Chris Nolan, he's definitely distancing himself from superheroes.
Yes.
For a good long thing, because
that might be good for him. I appreciate the Nolan Batman films, but if he wants to go do something else, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I mean,
let him flex his chops.
He's already doing Interstellar, which was being written by his brother, so. And
I'm actually still excited for that one. And then there was another movie that he's doing that I was excited for, and I can't remember it, but it's coming out later this year, I think. I just want to see not the same directors get brought in every time. Like, for example, Sam Raimi, don't bring him in just because he did Spider-Man. Don't bring in Mark Webber just because he did Amazing Spider-Man.
Although Jon Favreau, I wouldn't necessarily mind if they brought him in, because he might do an okay job, but even then, a lot of people are kind of worried, like, well, he got kicked off Iron Man 2, Cowboys vs. Aliens didn't do a good job.
Yeah, and that for Jon Favreau, though, because, I mean, he did Iron Man, you have a whole other argument there, which is, Marvel Studios should be brought in to do X-Men.
Yeah.
And I've seen arguments for both, and both are pretty compelling. To keep X-Men in its own or in the Sony pictures, because you're not going to get it out of them.
Well, yeah, like Fox is holding on to it, and it's also just a case of the X-Men are basically a contradiction within the Marvel universe, so...
Kind of. And so that's one of the issues. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll see Days of Future Past and see if it's worthwhile. If it is, I'll come back and report it. You and I will talk about it, obviously.
Yeah.
And see whether or not we thought it was worth it. I have a feeling we'll be doing that next week with Godzilla when I have actually been able to see it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So at that point, I'll give him at least the credit until I see it flop. And then at that point, I have my problems. And that's not just necessarily with what Sony Pictures is doing, not necessarily with Bryan Singer's doing.
Sony's got Spider-Man. Fox is the one that's got X-Men and Fantastic.
That's right. Fox has got it.
Yeah, Fox has got X-Men and Fantastic Four. Sony got Spider-Man.
Yeah, so, and again, it's the same thing with Sony. They're not going to let go of Spider-Man. 20th Century is not going to let go of X-Men.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Sinister Six flops, they'll just reboot it.
Exactly. That's exactly what they'll do. They will repurchase the rights again, and at that point, or they'll renew their rights again, and then they'll just reboot the franchise and keep doing it that way.
Yeah.
Except this time maybe with Miles Morales, or with Superior Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, Miles Morales probably would be a better option, because, I mean, it would take a good chunk of work to have to explain the whole Superior Spider-Man thing if they were to do it as a reboot.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that I can't really speak on Miles, because I haven't, like I said
I haven't
before,
read it either, but I'm just thinking if they wanted to do a very at-risk reboot, I mean, there was, back when The Amazing Spider-Man was in production, there was an African-American actor who was getting petitions to have him play Peter Parker, and have it be an African-American Peter Parker for a change, which is, a lot of people are thinking may have led to the creation of Miles Morales in the first place.
Well, and they've actually done an Elseworld story like that, haven't they? With Ultimate Universe or something like that?
All I know is that Miles Morales is the Ultimate Spider-Man, and really...
Spider-Man's history's weird.
Comics are weird.
Comics are weird. So, in the meantime, though, we have actually run out of time for Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. But in the meantime, in order for people to get a hold of us, first of all, we are on YouTube now, guys. And as you can see, we have a video feed now.
Hopefully if it's still recording.
Hopefully if it's still recording, but we'll get the bugs worked out. Pardon our dust. We're going to try and make this work as best as we can. Romney, for people who want to try and get in touch with what you're doing, how do they do so?
Well, best place to find me is on youtube.com/StudioPhantasma. You can also find me on moviepilot.com at moviepilot.com/ROMNE. It cut off the rest of the name, so that's the URL. And you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney's Reviews. Don't add the apostrophe. It just made the URL go completely weird. So yes. Romney's Reviews, no apostrophe, on Facebook. And, yeah, those are the three places you can find me.
All right. And since Aldo is not here, Aldo Gomez is usually our third person. He has gotten a wonderful new job, and we'll talk about that next week when we bring him in. But if people want to get a hold of him, you can go to twitter.com/Aldo531. Once again, that's Aldo531. And then also, he has a YouTube channel. It's funny, we're all YouTube producers at this point.
Yep.
And he's doing Anime Overdub ES. And, guys, I love the products that they come out with, just because of the silliness factor. And I also love Romney's reviews, because as much as I hate saying this, there may be times where I disagree with Romney, but at least he's giving at least something of a non-biased perspective.
At least as non-biased as it can get.
Yeah, at least with reviewers. I mean, it's really hard to kind of find that. If people want to find me, there are a couple places to do it. First of all, if you want to email the show, give us a suggestion of what you would like us to talk about, or if you have a question for us, you can go to geekyweek@gmail.com. Once again, that's geekyweek@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter. You can go to twitter.com/Drak, DRAK2326. You can also go to my YouTube channel, which is of the same name, where our episodes are posted. So all you have to do is go to YouTube and type in Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. And we already put up the most recent episode. For people who don't know this, we have a couple of other episodes. I will be getting them up onto YouTube shortly, as well as getting up the newer stuff. So you can reach us there. You can also reach me at my other YouTube page, which I do with my brother-in-law, the Shadow Blazer, and that is Drak and Shadow. So these are a couple places to reach us, but in the meantime, we do need to take a break for the week. So we will see you all next week. For Aldo, for Romney, we'll see you next week on Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions.
Raccoons.